Welcome.
Welcome to Coffee and Cleavage. Cheers. I'm Lenny.
And I'm Chantal.
And hello, Gary.
Hey, how you doing, ladies?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Well,
Awesome.
Like your guys' matching outfits today.
Feeling black today.
yeah. Well, today we are going to talk about sexual boundaries.
Well, sexual boundaries are what we're willing to do and feel comfortable in our sex life. This can include touch, sight, the way we want to be treated, and sexual context.
Yes. I feel like boundaries definitely don't get enough like airtime. They'll get talked about.
Yeah.
People just want to talk about sex without talking about boundaries or consent or all of those things. But it's all super important.
Yeah.
And definitely having boundaries establish a lot of trust.
Oh, yeah. It establishes trust between the two, you know? I always think it's important to have that communication.
Yeah, we say that a lot, huh? Yeah. Communicate. It's like, we know it's not easy, but like once you do it, it gets a lot easier. And sex gets better because when you're able to communicate what you want and what you need and what your boundaries are, then there's no like anxiety with sex.
Yeah.
You know?
How do you go about that, though? For the most part, your boundaries, you're like, let's sit down and have a discussion. These are my boundaries. Do not go past them. Don't go near my ass. It's like, I get communication, but like, how would you have a conversation about boundaries without being at like, don't do this. I will not do that. I will not do that.
I think there's a way of doing it to where you don't have to necessarily give them a fucking list and be like, let's sit down and have a chat. I think it's something like if you're just in conversation, you're expressing your desires and things you don't like.
Yeah.
Maybe you just have the conversation, you know?
So
Don't you think... Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just going to say, so less of like, here's a laundry list of everything I don't want you to fucking do to me, and more organic, like mixing it in, especially if you're with somebody new. Like, you definitely don't want to unload your laundry list of no's.
Yeah.
Don't you think a lot of times boundaries often come off like, you know, if it's like you're wanting, say you're with a guy and he's like, I want to bring someone else in. That would be like a big boundary. And that would be totally like, hey, that's like crossing a boundary where like I'm not. And that would be totally like, okay, like I get it. That's something you don't want to do. But say like, for example, what's a boundary with you guys that you have sexually?
I mean, I'm not into anal.
Yeah.
You know?
So, like, is that just unspoken, or have you told, like, I guess put this in your perspective. Have you told your partner, like, hey, I'm not into anal before?
I mean, so I've tried it.
Yeah.
And I just...
weren't into it.
You weren't I didn't find it pleasurable.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I wouldn't be open to trying it again, maybe. But, yeah it's just kind of like, nah.
Yeah,
not for me. Does nothing for me.
Yeah. I had like a thing for a while where I just like didn't like to be like restrained, which, you know, a lot of people are like, well, duh, I don't like that either. And a lot of people are like, oh, you don't like that? Like, you're not into being like restrained? It's kinky or whatever. But I feel like I got past that. So now that's like not really a boundary for me, but it was something that I definitely didn't like before. Like, I didn't feel like I couldn't like move. I didn't like that feeling at all. I was like, ugh. Yeah. It almost like turned me off, you know, because it like take me out of my hot spot.
But would you like to tie someone up?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But now I don't mind. Now I'm like getting more into like the idea of a sub role, you know, like being able to switch more fluidly between the two and like the idea of both. But I went through a period where I was like, no. Like, no. That's a no for me.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only thing that comes up for me where it was like, okay, this is something that I don't like during sex. Like, I don't like to be held down.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a pretty common one.
Yeah. What is a boundary you have, Gary?
You don't like your ass
I don't
played
have
with.
boundaries.
No, you don't like
Nothing.
your
You don't
ass
like your ass
licked.
licked, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's like a boundary, like don't go near that. I mean, like I'd be open to that, but it's like
Okay, wow, we're making progress on Gary.
You've opened your mind a little.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know what my boundary would be. I feel like my boundary, like where I'd be like, no. If I was with a girl and she's like, hey, I want to bring another guy, I'd be like, no.
What if she was like, hey, I want to peg you?
I'd be like, no.
Oh.
Fuck no. That would
See,
be a big
those
one,
are
though.
boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Those are
that would be
boundaries.
something where I'd be like, not happening.
Yeah, not
For
willing
sure.
to adjust, not willing to meet in the middle, not willing to do any type of ass play is what you're saying.
Especially if I was with a girl and, like we were good for like a while and she's like, hey, so like I have this idea. She's like, like I'd like to be with two guys. I'd be like, what? I would have a whole different perspective on her and be like, so you'd like me to pick a guy out and we both fuck you. Like that would be, I know a lot of guys are super comfortable with that, into that. That's not for me.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. And
Yeah.
that's knowing your boundaries and being able to express that to your partner.
Mhm.
I like being open to things, especially like, like where you guys are like, oh, you're like ass stuff. Like I would be like open to stuff like that. But like certain things like, yeah, pegging and like having threesome with another guy, that's just like off limits.
your limits.
That's
Off
like my
limits.
boundary where I'm like, yeah, that's something I wouldn't do. So I
Yeah.
mean, like I know everyone has their own thing where they're like, fuck no. And it would just turn you off right away where you're like, not even doing that.
Yeah.
But other people will probably be like, fucking, that would be hot. But I mean, everyone
yeah.
has their own thing, I guess. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I get it. Threesomes are not for me.
Yeah.
I'm just I get the allure or like the kind of picture that's kind of painted mostly by porn. And like the fantasy, I get the fantasy of it, but I think the reality is like I'm just too traditional for that.
Yeah.
To work out for me.
Yeah.
You know, like almost a little bit selfish. Like I don't want to fucking share somebody that I care about.
Same. I could only ever consider that if I was, I mean, I could never do that in a relationship.
In a relationship, yeah, with
Yeah.
somebody that you cared about.
Yeah.
I don't know how threesomes, I know a lot of people like bring in people to relationships, but I just don't, I wonder so much how those work where it's like, say it's like you bring a girl in and the guy is kind of giving her more attention. Wouldn't the other girl, like the girlfriend of the wife, be like, what the fuck? And that create a huge issue. But I mean,
I
like
can.
I think it can for
sometimes
sure.
it does, other times it doesn't. So
Other
it's-
times it seems like people have their own boundaries, say that a couple is into that. They likely do that often, not just one time. And they probably have their own boundaries and rules kind of set up for them as a couple that's like, okay, we're going to do this, but we're not going to have, some people might be like, okay, we're not going to do any emotional, we're not going to date her, we're not going to whatever, you're not going to give her more individual attention. Like they might set up their own boundaries and rules
Yeah.
that they're abiding by. Whereas other people might be like, way more open. Like, there are people that like date other people
Yeah.
inside their relationship.
I wonder how many people just want threesomes so bad and they have them finally and they're like a letdown, or they're like,
Letdown.
fuck yeah, that was amazing, I want to do that again. And both people feel that way. I wonder if it goes like the guy's like, that was so amazing, or if he's like, I felt kind of like I couldn't please two women at one time. I mean, because it's probably pretty hard to do that,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a lot of women are kind of like, hey, the guy wants that, so I guess I'll do it. And then I just wonder
And then
how
they have regrets after.
yeah. Because then they're like, I want to do that again. And it becomes like a thing where it's like, okay, now that's what we do now. And that just leads you into a whole nother thing where I'm like, works for some people and other people just doesn't work. And it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that often fantasies are better as fantasies. I'm not saying people shouldn't try to like live out their fantasies, but I do think that often things are better than how they turn out to be.
Yes.
Just in general. And even if you look at like life as a whole, like you really, really, really want something and then you get it and you're like, oh, okay. It's like the idea of getting it sometime
Yeah.
is more exciting than actually getting it, what you think you want.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Definitely. Yeah.
Usually for material things more than experiences. And I get that can be an experience. So that could be pretty exciting for somebody. But I also see what you're saying. Like it could be like rabbit hole. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, oh, we had one threesome. That was awesome. We're going to have fucking 10 threesomes this year.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have one every single month.
Oh
We're going
my
to go on
God.
fucking sex cruises.
People do that.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
It becomes a lifestyle.
But that's what just shows you. It's so crazy how so many people are so different, because that could work for some people like perfectly fine. They could be married and just like, that's what we do. And other people could be like, how the fuck are you married doing that? And then
Yeah.
it works for them. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but it's like, hey, if it works for you, cool.
Yep.
I think a lot of it probably comes down to like how we're raised, what we're exposed to, what's normal, what's not normal, like for us, and like our view, like how did we grow up, where did we grow up, and like all those influences kind of
Yeah.
shape us into what our view of relationships are like. 'Cause
Mm-hmm.
I know lots of people have like, you know, way super open relationships, and I'm like, how does that work? You
Yeah.
know? And it's
Yeah.
like, well,
And it's like, that's the only way it will work for them, though. That's what's crazy is like, if they went to totally traditional, it's like, it wouldn't work.
for them.
So then this is how it works for us. And it's like, okay, if
Yeah.
that's what you got to do. I mean,
It's
cool.
kind of admirable. People can just make different things work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that without boundaries, that sex is just not really that good without boundaries, you know, in my opinion. But
Well, because everyone has some, you
a
know.
lot of people hide theirs, you know, they don't want
Yeah.
to talk about them. They don't want to share them.
Yeah.
Or like he said, how are you supposed to do it? So a lot of people just end up not.
But like, have you been with people where you're like, hey, like you've had to like express to them, like, that's something I'm not doing. That's like my boundary. Like, have you had to like discuss that with people before in the past?
I mean, yes. Yeah. Because for me, like my boundary not being held down, it was like a negative experience that I had. And then I didn't want to like feel I was experiencing that again. So I had to like tell a partner like, okay, like this is just something that I don't really like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did have to share that.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a downer, maybe it wasn't, but it made it better because I didn't have to think about it like, oh God, I hope that he doesn't do this, you know, like while you're having sex. That really makes you like completely out of your own head. Like
Yeah.
you're thinking about that instead of thinking about being in the moment, you know, and there's obviously a big trust component with that too.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I think, and sometimes you may not know until you're in the moment and you're like, I didn't like that.
Yeah, no, that's how I figured it out.
Yeah.
Is I didn't know until like I was with somebody and they did that and it was like, whoa, it was like not good for me. I was like completely just like, ugh, like crawling out of my skin type feeling. And then I had to like really sit with it and think like, okay, why did I feel like this? You know, and then recognizing like, okay, like this is a boundary for me and this is something that bothers me and that I don't like.
So what made you change your mind on it now, or like
I
more
don't-
open to it?
I don't know. Maybe this podcast or just like time and like different time period, different version of me, like further from maybe things that have happened in my past that I've gotten over, you know? I don't
Yeah.
know.
You're
Yeah.
being more open-minded now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so are
That's the
you, Gary.
podcast.
You want your ass licked now.
Yeah, I know.
Applications for
I don't want it. Like, that's what I'm doing now.
open to the idea. I just have to give you shit for that. I'm sorry.
That's fucking funny. You have to tell us when you experience
Yeah,
that.
you
Hell,
do
let's
because
fucking know. It's gonna be kind of hard just me go find a girl like, hey, so I'm trying to get this done. Are you down for that?
Yeah, here's my bucket
Will you eat
list.
my ass?
It's
love
for
it.
research purposes, for a podcast I'm on, and it would really help if you help me achieve this bucket list item.
Great plan. I'll tell him that.
I definitely have to say that like I do feel like the podcast, it really does like open your mind. Just talking about sex more and so regularly, it just makes you just, I don't know, just think more and be more aware.
Yeah.
And be kind of more in tune with yourself. Like I've definitely ended up liking things that I didn't like before, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right,
definitely.
yeah,
I think too, when you're with someone where you feel safe and connected to, that makes a huge difference too, where you're more open and willing to try things, you know?
yeah, that is very true.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So, I mean, even if you have multiple partners, you can also have different boundaries with different people. Boundaries with a lifelong partner will look different than with,
Yeah, somebody you've only been dating for like a month or
Yeah.
2 months or 6 months
Yeah.
or whatever.
Mm.
That is such an important distinction because, like when you're like for example, when you were dating the guy who you kind of felt like a booty call to, I know we talked about that not that long ago, and then you were seeing other people and he was seeing other people. Well, your boundaries with that person might have been different than the boundaries with the person that you were also dating.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to be the same.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's kind of an interesting.
Do you think you'd have less
take.
boundaries with someone that you felt more comfortable with?
Yeah,
That made you feel a lot
definitely.
more comfortable?
Oh, yeah.
Because you feel safe
Yeah.
and you trust the person
Mhm.
versus like if it's somebody you just started dating, you more like, okay, you're not ready. Even if something's not a boundary for you, you might not be ready to do that or like go there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you just started dating someone for a week, you're probably not going to let them tie you up.
Yeah.
Right? Like that'd be weird. Wouldn't that be weird? I feel like that's like a progression of later on, like to get to the kinky stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting thought. Have you ever gotten kinky with anybody like new really fast?
Not really. Not
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I don't know. When you're doing that fast, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I've never experienced it that fast, like right away.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah,
that's
me
stuff
either.
you just bring in to spice shit up and have fun and just make
Yeah,
shit
that's
different
like-
and fun.
Yeah, that's like a more developed relationship where you're like, okay, we've done all of this. Now let's get kinky.
Yeah.
Do you think your boundaries can change? I know you were just kind of saying this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but do you think, if you're, say, okay, Lenny, you don't like anal, but say you're with someone and it's like, he like, that's what he
He
likes.
loves
And he's
it.
like, hey, like, what can we like do it to make you like it?
Well, I'd be willing to, if I really was into the person and it was something that he loves. All right, I'll give it another try. Maybe you could change my mind. Make me
Yeah.
like it. If
Yeah.
not, then sorry, it's just not for me,
Yeah.
I guess there's a
Yeah.
good way to go about it, like being like, kind of having you in mind, but not being like pushy. Cause I feel like when people want something, it's like the pushy, like, let's just do
Yeah.
it. Come on. Like, you like it. Come on. It's like
Ugh.
fucking, then you're like, fuck off. No.
Yeah.
If the person wants to eat my ass first and, you know what I mean, play it down there, just
Yeah.
kind of see what happens.
Yeah. I love you.
I might be like, fuck no, what are you doing? Or I might be like,
Okay.
all right, let's try it.
But wait, hold on. But you do like your ass being licked,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure this wasn't part of the boundary.
No.
I'm like, damn, girl, that's nice.
Let's be real. What girl doesn't?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Maybe some don't. Some might not. I mean, don't know.
Oh.
Everybody is very different. But
Yeah.
I mean, the goal should just always be, working towards communication, pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
boundaries,
Yeah.
being really clear about what it is that you want or don't want.
Feeling safe with the person that you're hooking up with, and then sex is better.
Well, I guess bottom line is the more comfortable you make someone feel, the more they're going to essentially do.
Yes.
Yeah,
The more you're
that's
willing
one
to
way to
explore.
look at it.
Yeah, definitely.
And the more
I
comfortable
love
they
that
are. it's
man
like,
mindset.
Yep.
The more comfortable she is, the more she'll do.
Yeah.
That's what he heard. That was the whole episode recap.
It's like,
Yep.
if you simple it up, that's kind of like how you guys would feel too. If you're
Yeah.
more comfortable with someone and they're
Yeah.
not like pushy, it's like you will do way more.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Willing to try a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Cheers to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Don't forget to rate and subscribe.
5 stars, please.
Cheers.
Cheers.